Hi, my name is Kevin Thomas, W1DED, and this is Q5 Ham Radio. I've been interviewing the board members of Parks on the Air, and as I am a board member, somebody had recommended maybe I should have somebody interview me. Jim N8JRD has agreed to do that for me. This episode is brought to you by DX Engineering, supporting amateur radio operators worldwide with the gear and expertise to get you on the air.
Thanks a lot for having me on the Q5 channel. Absolutely excited to take the opportunity to learn a little bit more about not only you, Kevin, but the Parks on the Air program. So tonight we're going to take an opportunity to talk with Kevin Thomas, Whiskey 1, Delta Echo Delta, one of the newest Parks on the Air board members, and I think all of the board members at this point are fairly new. Of course, Parks on the Air, an extremely popular program derived from the excitement that was generated during the 2016 POTA operating event. POTA has, of course, inspired numerous new hams to get on the air and operating in exciting ways as they've activated new parks across the nation and the world. As Parks on the Air makes its transition to a board-driven volunteer organization, with the retirement of one of its founders, Jason Johnson, W3 Alpha Alpha X-Ray, in 2024, we'll take some time to sit with Kevin tonight to discuss a bit about his life in amateur radio and his vision for Parks on the Air and the program. So, Kevin, I have a little backstory that I learned a little bit about you, and I'll set you up, and then we'll see a little bit more about how you kind of got into this whole thing again. So with the conversation kicking off this evening, I'll say welcome, Kevin, to your own channel here on Q5. Kevin was licensed in 1977, if I heard correctly, and it was while you were a student in high school. And so you are a long-time amateur operator, and you were inspired, I think, by your father, W1YOA, who had more interest in building and tinkering, it sounded like, with his ham radios than he did necessarily operating. And it sounds like you immersed yourself more in the radio study and learning some CW in those formative years. As many of us young hams have found, and this is me included, college, work, and life sort of got in the way of you pursuing that hobby as you went along, and eventually that license did indeed lapse, if I understand. So I have a opener for you here, which is to say that since 2022, you are relicensed and reinvigorated with interest in ham radio, and you find yourself back in the hobby that you enjoyed so much, of course, as a young man. And I'd like to kind of get some idea of how getting back into the hobby after such a long break has sort of evolved, and also how you enjoy operating in today's space of ham radio.
Well, first of all, Jim, you've done your research really well. You've got all of that spot on. My dad was the builder. He built all the Heathkit equipment, and I ended up having the luxury of being able to operate the gear. I didn't have to climb too many towers. He did that also. But I've got to say that during the 40 years that I had let my license lapse, I still carried around my gear for 4 decades. It kind of got trimmed down over time, but I had bought a Kenwood TS830 while I was in high school. It was a big purchase for me, and every move I made, I brought that along. So I guess the point in saying that is ham radio never entirely left me. Even though I let my license lapse, I still had my old logbooks and QSO cards, and I just knew at some point I was going to get back into it. As you already pointed out, my career, raising 3 kids, sort of got in the way. Then I found myself without any kids at the house, COVID, and my wife was training for a marathon, and I had time. So I decided to re-up. I got my extra class license, and when I turned the radio on, I started hearing Parks on the Air. So to answer your question, what did I enjoy doing early on? It was Parks on the Air. I really got intrigued by grabbing some gear, going out to a park, and setting up and operating. I should also add, it's just a very difficult situation where I live now. I live on an island connected to the mainland via a causeway and a bridge, but there are small lots, as most island communities are here in Maine. And I could put a tower up in the backyard, but I just know that I wouldn't be invited to any of the July 4th festivities. So leaving the house with my gear and an antenna just became a thing for me, and I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I think that is something that I will say is most inviting about this program is the new amateurs are finding this program and finding it as a way to sort of dip their toe in HF operation, especially, and it's a really welcoming and opening community to turn that radio on and learn a lot about how to run the radio, not only in your house, which I think is actually a little bit easier than going out, of course, to the park, and all the challenges that come with becoming a portable operator with that type of gear. So yeah, I wanted to kind of get some context on not only, of course, how you got into the Parks on the Air hobby, but what else are you also interested here with amateur radio? I see that you're quite the contester, if I read correctly, Kevin. So tell us a little bit about your contest achievements.
So I would not call myself quite a contester, but I really enjoy contesting.
Okay.
I spend a lot of time with it, and I've had the good fortune of interviewing many top contesters. You know, I have traveled down the Caribbean, and I've operated contests from Victor Papa 5 Echo, Turks and Caicos. Just recently, I was on Cayman Brac down in the Cayman Islands operating the CQWPX contest, and I've run several contests from, we have a remote station up in northern Maine, also me and a buddy from California. So yes, what I find my operating to be like, I still have a business here in the Portland area that takes up a lot of time.
Okay.
The Q5 channel takes up a lot of time. I find myself not getting on and operating every day, sometimes not even every week, but I will do a lot of contacts during a contest or going out to a park. And typically if I go for a park, it might even be a weekend, but I'll make a lot of contacts during that time. So I kind of put all my operating into a short period of time and then come back and get my job done.
You know, I feel like that's one of those things that us amateurs have to find a balance for, even as we get older, and some of us that are lucky enough to be retired already. Not me. I told Kevin that we couldn't do this until 9 o'clock tonight. But I do think that is kind of a very common thread that I hear from a lot of folks is they're only able to do the hobby part-time, right? And so when you do, you get out there and you really enjoy it. And Parks on the Air is a great way for that to happen. So let's talk a little bit about that. Let's drill a little further into kind of the POTA background that you have. So I want to ask about how you kind of became acquainted with the Parks on the Air program and the folks that are involved in it after you got relicensed, after that kind of initial NPOTA program was established. Can you share some of those, I guess, qualities of this particular program that drew you in and got you interested in kind of becoming a board member for the program as it stands today?
So I'll begin with getting involved with Parks in the Air. It was the ease of being able to do it. It wasn't complicated. I didn't need to buy a lot of gear. Of course, like a lot of ham radio operators, I did over time. There was always another antenna I needed, but I was able to put enough gear together, go to a park, and start making contacts. I think one of the interesting things about Parks in the Air for me is it's a phenomenal community. And I know ham radio in general is, but I found myself going to parks, making contacts, and logging the same people over and over again, and getting to know them like we hams do over the air, never in person. And as that progressed, I got to know some of the founders. I actually volunteered to do some additional work and got a chance to meet Jason Johnson on air. Mm-hmm. I was able to interview him. Back then, Parks on the Air had a contest, so that those two things intersected really well. I was very involved with contests, helping kind of manage that behind the scenes and get the statistics out. So I think that visibility really helped a lot. At some point, Parks on the Air decided to do a book in collaboration with the ARRL, and they asked me to write one of the chapters. So during that entire progression, meeting more people, interviewing more people, and apparently I must have exhibited some sort of skill or trait that they thought I might be good on the board. I was really honored to be asked to be on the board. It's really a great group of people. And, you know, it's been an interesting year over the past year because this organization was started with a handful of people basically doing phenomenal IT work, and they never had really built the infrastructure necessary for what is almost like a large corporation. So we spent the last year working a lot on governance, but I'm getting ahead of myself. That was what got me further into the Parks and the Air organization, and then ultimately asked to be a board member.
Yeah, it is worth recognizing, and I'm sure that if you've watched some of Kevin's other interviews with the board members, that this is a fully volunteer organization. So the folks that do get involved are genuinely concerned and interested in how the program is progressing and how it can continue to be sustained. And I think that it's great to see folks that are joining that were active, that have really put in some hard work, some blood, sweat, and tears to make the program better. Like Kevin, you wrote part of a book for the program as it stands. I know other folks that you've interviewed, like Mike Case, W8MSC, K8MST Mark, and I believe I've met Tom as well. All gentlemen that I've had genuinely excellent interactions with, and I'll give credit where credit is due. All the POTA community has been really welcoming, even to me as a brand new ham. So it is worth mentioning that to you as we kind of go through this today. So I have this one's going to be a little bit more, I guess, long-winded, and I guess I'll give you some context here. So oftentimes, and I think this is going to give you an opportunity to really drill into what the board wants to do. Oftentimes, building something new is exciting and novel, which draws excellent early attention. And as we quickly tick past what is Parks on the Air's 8th year as a radio sport, the growth and interest in this program has really exceeded the expectations and seems only to continue to be well received and participated in by new and existing hams alike. So I've got some stats here, and I believe that you've said these things before out loud, but I'll throw them out here. It sounds like you guys are exceeding now 85,000 parks in the program. You've got 10,200 parks that are on the air at any given point. You've got 15.2 million QSOs in 2025 that you logged, and 406,000 logs that have been processed. So there's a lot of data that is being sent back to the Parks on the Air program. And that kind of brings me to the question that I have, and I love to hear what your thoughts are as a new board member, and knowing that you guys have been meeting for a couple of, almost a year now, is that right? That's right, a year now already. And that brings me to my question, which is, regarding the role that this board has in being able to sustain this program and the extreme early growth that it has seen, right? There's a huge responsibility that is on the shoulders of you guys that are leading this program now. How do you see the Parks on the Air program continuing to evolve as this board carries it into the future of the program?
So I think an important distinction I'd like to make,
Okay.
We would like to see Parks on the Air hunters and activators see no change at all. We want them to have fun and be able to rely upon a system that works really well. And what I know from businesses, in order to make that happen, there's a lot of not glamorous work that has to happen behind the scenes. And I think that's where the board is coming in. We want to make sure the IT system not only is rock solid so that you can do uploads and get the awards that you have earned as quickly as possible, but we want to make sure it can scale. And, you know, it's somewhat of a miracle that people like Tom Martin, W8TAM, and others built a system years ago, back in 2017, 2018, that has done as well as it has. And I think there's a real credit to that team, Jason Johnson included, and others, that they were able to do that. But it certainly has been showing stress fractures because of the absolute volume. So that's really been goal number one. How do we upgrade the system? And James Linden, VE3JLN, has been working behind the scenes to do the next version of POTA. I've been calling it POTA 2.0, and I was corrected the other day by one of the other board members that it's really more like 3.0 or 4.0.
Okay.
It's that much more advanced. But beyond that, you know, we have a huge group of volunteers that are helping make Parks on the Air run. And I think that we're thinking more about how do we provide training and support to the volunteers. We're always talking about supporting the activators and the hunters, but the fact is, as we bring people on, and a lot around the world, how are they getting the training necessary to make the decisions they need to make in order to keep the program going well? There are some very unglamorous things like administrative pieces and financial pieces that we just want to be able to tighten up. For a while, the donation button, for example, wasn't working on the Parks on the Air website.
Oh, okay.
And, you know, we have no sponsors. There's no revenue that we get at all except for donations from users. So we spent a lot of time. I can't take any credit for this, but a group of people spent a lot of time getting accounts set up and getting the website corrected so that we can get donations coming in. So a lot of our effort is going to be behind the scenes, making sure the infrastructure is built in a way that we can continue to scale, because we just see this growth. I mean, it's just going almost straight up with these additional parks around the world. So we're going to have more users, we're going to have more QSOs, we're going to have more parks being activated. We want to make sure we're ready for that.
Yeah, I took a look at, I think, one of your previous conversations, speaking to some of the Parks on the Air 2.0, colloquially speaking here. And of course, whatever version you guys come up with, we'll take. But it sounds like there's a lot of exciting things that the volunteer team that is behind keeping this thing running is working on. Live statistics, improved awards, expansion of administrative tools to make the volunteers that are helping keep this thing running a little bit more enabled and autonomous to do those things. Improved mapping. We heard from your mapping reps, new certificates, improved log uploads, all these great things that I hear are coming to Parks on the Air. And to be perfectly honest with you, Parks on the Air has been an absolutely flawless program for me personally, in my experience, right? I've been able to upload my logs whenever I'd like to. When I needed a support ticket answered, a volunteer answered it in short order. So it has really been very impressive how well run the program has been. And so I think if I heard what you're saying correctly here, Kevin, in that response, is to say the board is looking to use a light touch and continue to enable the already awesome community of volunteers that are supporting the program to continue to do so, and kind of open that space for those experts to be experts where they are already experts. So that's really kind of something that I was most curious about is where does the board want to take this? And so that was kind of the big question that I had for you, Kevin. I would love to know, though, you are on the POTA board, and tell us a little bit more about kind of your aspirations. I don't know how long a POTA board member sits on the board, so tell us, what is your plan during your time on this board?
Well, so to answer that question, this is part of what we've had to invent ourselves. There were no bylaws for Parks on the Air, so we've created bylaws. We've created terms for board of directors. So we've agreed upon a 3-year term. Since we all started at the same time, then we've had to come up with a way to stagger that. So to begin, some of us are already committed to more than 3 years. But once we get through that initial stagger, then it'll those board seats will have an option of being able to be moved on to somebody else. Just to answer your question, I'm just really excited, frankly, about helping scale. I mean, again, my business background has all been about how do you take a business that's doing $9 million a year, build it to 150 million. So again, it's not that glamorous, but I want to make sure that as an activator, somebody can go to the field, make their 100 contacts, upload it, and not really think about whether this works or not. They just know it does, and we want to have that confidence. I think one of the things that I'd like to see happen more in the future is the face-to-face contacts, the opportunities to go to Dayton or Hamvention, and we have again another volunteer group of people that do this regularly. But I'd like to be able to provide them more support and learn from what they do in Dayton. For example, there's 10 booths in the flea market at Dayton that people like Carrie Wright look after for us, and others, KB3 WAV. But I think we can learn from what they have done and then take that to other events, not only across the US and Canada, but around the world. So I do think that ham radio really benefits from, say, events like Dayton, where we finally get to meet somebody in person and you kind of get re-energized for the next step.
And Dayton is just around the corner, so I imagine that we will hopefully see some of those board members there. Are you going to be attending Dayton yourself, Kevin?
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, the POTA has a 10-booth presence in the flea market, and you really should try to look those people up. Carrie does a fantastic job with that. There will also be 2 forums during Dayton, one on Saturday and another on Sunday. The Saturday forum will include all the board members. So to answer your question, I will be there with the other 6 board members, and we intend to do a Q&A. So if people have questions for the board, please send them to me. You can find my email address on QRZ, or attend in person and ask the questions then. But we're really looking forward to that. We had a forum last year, very well attended, standing room only, so we suspect that will happen again. On Sunday, the forum will be a presentation by Mike Case, who you mentioned, and Tom Martin, who will be talking specifically about POTA 3.0, 4.0, whatever you want to talk about. But it'll be the IT presentation kind of an update for everybody and another chance to answer questions. So yes, there's going to be a full contingent of board members as well as other POTA people at the Dayton Hamvention.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned last year's forum was extremely well attended. I was one of those attendees. Stood in the back of the standing room because I arrived just a few moments after all the seats were filled up. But I suspect, again, this year, knowing all the numbers that we know about POTA, that it's going to be a packed house again. And it's just awesome to see that you guys are out there, again, connecting with the community, because I absolutely agree with what you had to say there, which is the excitement really is getting out into the park with your friends and turning the radio on and having some fun doing a hobby that you both share together. So it's really a cool way to connect out there. So Kevin, I just had a couple of questions for you, and I really do appreciate you taking some time this evening to chat through them. I want to thank you for taking on the board member role for Parks on the Air. You guys have an amazing volunteer team, including yourself. You have massive responsibility ahead of you to shepherd this program on into the future, getting it to 10 years and beyond, I hope. And I want to say, just as a newly reinterested amateur operator, and I just got licensed as a general just about a year or two ago now. This has been an absolute godsend for me. I've really enjoyed operating POTA, and I think it's been an awesome program. So before we wrap up, I want to give you one opportunity here. Are there any other thoughts that you have regarding the POTA board or yourself in general that you'd like to share with the crowd?
Well, I just want to end on the note that I appreciate very much you taking the time to do this. And I would recommend to anybody to check out Everyday Ham. That is, actually, you co-host with another group, correct?
That's correct, yes. The Everyday Ham podcast is co-hosted by myself, N8JRD, Whiskey 8 Kilo November X-Ray, which is Rory, and James, K8JKU, all Michigan-based hams here. We have a lot of fun. It's a little less formal than Q5, so I think we coexist well. Come on by and check us out. But yeah, I appreciate you having me on as a sort of interviewer. It's a real honor to be on the Q5 channel tonight, Kevin.
Well, thank you, Jim. I do appreciate you doing this. My name is Kevin Thomas, W1DED. This has been Q5 Ham Radio with Jim, N8JRD, 73.
73.